Welcome to the Final Whistle podcast. I am your host, Kirk, and alongside me, as per normal, is the great Ivan.
Okay.
Hello, Ivan. Today we are joined by a very, very special guest, and I will pass the microphone over to her right now so she can tell us about her life, her football career, and what she does here at the Surrey FA.
Thanks, Kirk. Hi everyone, I'm Helen Ogle, Football Development Officer here at Surrey FA. Currently play football. I've been playing since I was 10 years old. Started off playing park football, joined a local boys team, and then moved into the girls setup from 12 years old onwards, and sort of where I've been, moving into the women's pathway sort of ever since.
Love it. No, perfect. No, that's perfect. So what clubs have you played at then?
Okay, played at most recently Woking FC Women. Before that was at Fulham for a couple of seasons. I've also played at Wimbledon and Chichester at Tier 3.
Wicked, brilliant. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Bit more interesting than me, isn't it?
Yeah. Where have you played, Ivan?
Epsom Hill, Colts, Chene Park. Not quite the same to reel off the show reel, but
There you go. This is the thing. We've got big time and we've got low time. So with the Euros just around the corner, we've decided to pick our squads and our starting 11 from the BBC Sport England squad list that is available. Following on from last night's game, I've been quite harsh in who I've culled, but it is what it is.
it's not going to be an easy decision, isn't it? Is it? Going from 33 down to 26, when you look at the amount of talent that's in the squad list, it's probably not been in previous years, I guess. I suppose we're quite lucky with the amount of players that you've got in there. I mean, you're leaving, even out from the 33, leaving out players like Marcus Rashford, which I think kind of shows the quality that England have got at the minute.
Totally. I think it's been right as well that he's left out some of his regulars, Henderson and Rashford, because they haven't cut it, and we need to move on from him, Southgate, picking and playing his safe players. But there we go. So we'll start with goalkeepers. So who's the goalkeeper that you've canned from the four that are in the squad?
I think we're unanimous in who we're getting rid of in James Trafford. As good of a keeper he is, he's probably not been as good for Burnley as he probably hoped. He got dropped towards the end of the season. Obviously, basically won England the Under-21 World Cup, the World Cup of Euros, the World Cup last year, but he's probably not quite ready to go to a major tournament with the senior side.
Yeah, I think I look at that, sort of the options that you've got there, and I think they're sort of no-brainers when you've got Ramsdale, Pickford and Henderson to choose from, so they would be the three that I'm taking.
I totally agree. And as an ex-goalkeeper myself, I think confidence plays a massive part in leading that goalkeeping position. And and he's been good this season. It's just unfortunately he has had to deal with a lot of shots and has been prone to making that mistake or two. And I just think that with the three that Helen's mentioned, I think they're three top class goalkeepers. Brilliant, perfect. So defenders, I will pass the mic over to Helen to start off with. Who are the defenders that you've culled?
So I have culled Jared Branthwaite and Jarell Quansah. Again, just looking at the squad list that you've got available there, I think there's a lot of versatility amongst the group there. You've got, I think you look at your defensive unit anyway, and you don't tend to see as much of a rotation as some of your other units. I think where you've got the experience and you've got some real sort of like leaders in that group, you want to be taking your experienced players with you, and just having that depth in quality. But again, it's a hard unit to be able to break through into. But yeah, fair that they've managed to get into that list to even be considered and with a view to be taken.
Yeah, brilliant. Ivan?
So I'm also in the same boat with Jarell Quansah. I think he's a great up-and-coming player and he's had a really good season for Liverpool, but it's potentially 2 years or a year or two early for him to go to a major tournament, but he's definitely one to look out for the future. One who's maybe not so much to look out for the future is Lewis Dunk. Obviously he's got a lot of experience, but I don't really think he's got enough at a national level or international level to kind of justify selection. I think he's not had a bad season, but you look at some of the other names on the list who have probably had slightly better than him. And as Helen also said, versatility. He's kind of your old-fashioned centre-back, and I think he's a great player, Lewis Dunk, but I just think he's one of those names that I couldn't actually see him playing any minutes if he was on the plane. So,
yeah. So you both cold 2.
Yes.
I've done 3.
Okay.
So I've done Dunk for exactly the same as what you're saying.
Not because you're a Palace fan.
Nothing to do with me being a Palace fan at all. But I look at the squad, and as you say, he's not going to get any minutes. I think the only reason I probably would have left him is he does pop up with that odd goal or two, and I think if we're struggling, you can throw him up there and he might win a header and he might make something happen. But he's gone. Sorry, Lewis. I've also got rid of Konsa and Quansah,
yeah.
There you go. Mainly because I think that out of all of the lists, they're the ones that just need to just keep playing, and they're the ones for the future. But as Helen said, the fact that they're in and around players like Maguire, John Stones, Trippier, Walker, they're going to be learning. So this, I think, Southgate picking them was great for the future of English football, and it just goes to show just how strong and how much depth we've actually got. And you go back to World Cups and European Championships of yesteryear, it's always been, can we fit that square peg in that round hole and put that there? But the actual defensive unit that we've got there, A, they're winners, B, they're experienced, and then you throw in there that mixture of a bit of an experience with Gay and when you even talk about Gomez as well, internationally, he's still very, very young. So yeah, they're the 3 that have made the chop for me, I'm afraid. So I will be sending them a voicemail later, just letting them know why they're gone. Midfielders, Ivan.
Yeah, so I've got rid of 2 midfielders that I'm cutting from the original 33. One that's potentially a bit unlucky, Kobe Mainoo. I just think he probably would have been in the squad if this was done a month ago, but the way that Adam Wharton has played, he's been in the last, to end the Premier League season, and then even against Bosnia, he was sensational. I just think I would rather have Wharton in the squad than Mainoo at the minute, but I can also see Mainoo being on a plane potentially to replace Joe Gomez. It just depends if Southgate's going to want an extra midfielder or an extra defender, but I think Mainoo, he's going to be one of the future stars in that squad because he's only 18 or 19, so he's got plenty of years ahead of him. The other one, I think this is probably a no-brainer, it's Curtis Jones. I think don't get me wrong, he's a good player, but there's so many other players that England have got who I think are fairly similar. And Curtis Jones is another one that's still quite young, and maybe it's a tournament too soon for him, but he could be another one to look out for.
No,
I totally agree. Helen?
So I've dropped from the original list Curtis Jones, Mainoo and Wharton. A little bit different to what you've said, but I was looking at the other 3 that we've got options. Trent, Conor Gallagher, Declan Rice, all very much leaders in their domestic club capacity, and I just think to not have them on the plane and as part of that squad, who I see as fundamentally some of them being in the starting 11. Again, I just couldn't see that as an option, being able to drop them.
Yeah, no, I'm the same. I've done 2. I've done Mainoo and Jones. Jones, I just don't think he's up to it at international level. When you've got the likes of, and even when you look in the midfield that you've got there that aren't mentioned in midfielders, he's never going to get ahead of Bellingham, he's never going to get ahead of Foden, and I know they're different players and all that lot, but so that's the reason. And I think that Mainoo as well, I think he's just one for the future. You kind of look at these players that you build teams around, and I think he's one of them lads that you can't help but get excited about watching and growing, and if nurtured right at club level, could go on and be sensational at international level. So that leaves the forwards, and I'll go first. I've got rid of one. I've got rid of Tony. I think when you look at everyone who's mentioned in the forwards list, Ivan Toney's the one that wouldn't offer me anything that the rest of them don't. He's a good player, 100%, but for me, he's just not. He's not enough to get in front of the likes of Saka, Watkins, Harry Kane, Eze, Bellingham. That's mine. Helen, who did you can?
Yeah, I can concur with that completely. So I've dropped two. I've dropped Ivan Toney, similar very much to the reasons. I don't see him starting above Kane or Ollie Watkins. I've also dropped James Maddison. Just looking at like the forward list there that we've got, I can't see him coming in for some of your players that you've got there. I'm thinking Foden, Saka, Anthony Gordon. I just think they all offer something different, but I don't think he quite meets what they can offer and they can give. And if you're wanting to change a game, like early second half, I think you've got game changers there which I think would have a greater impact potentially than what Maddison would have.
Yeah, I'm the exact same as Helen there. I've also gone two, one of them being James Maddison. I think he's not had a very good second half to the season. He was supplied for Spurs at the start. Obviously, he had a bit of an injury problem, but I think if you're looking at picking form players, there's a few there that you kind of pick over him. I also don't really think he's a forward. I think he should be a midfielder, Maddison, but then you can't really see him playing over your likes of Bellingham he's not the same kind of player as Rice, but even Eze, I still think you'd pick Eze in a more midfield role than Maddison potentially. And then the other one, I do think it's quite hard. The forward's probably the hardest one of who to get rid of, but I'm also saying Ivan Toney. He's not quite had the form this season. Obviously, he didn't play till I think it was January. And although there is this whole thing about, yes, he's probably the best penalty taker in the squad and whatever, I don't really think you can justify taking him just because of penalties. He'll certainly offer something up top, but then you look at Ollie Watkins as well, and Watkins has had a far better season than Toney. I also think it was a bit harsh that Dominic Solanke didn't even make the 33. I thought he'd potentially be in it over Toney because of his season at Bournemouth. But yeah, like I said earlier, the names that we're kind of like just about missing out. You look at in other years they could have easily got in.
Yeah, and again it goes back down to that huge amount of exciting. I've always called him the one player that we've always missed is that Gaza player in my eyes, because we never really had that one creative genius. And you look at Eze, Foden, Grealish, Gordon, Palmer, Saka. They're not as good as Gaza because he was just unbelievable, but they're all that type of player who can create
something or nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what these tournaments need, because you're going to be playing against teams that are going to be parking the bus, and you just need that little bit of creativity. But yeah, so we've broken the hearts of these players. They're now going to go onto the beach to Dubai and relax with their families and have a nice break. So the first game that we are playing, our starting 11. So let's start with goalkeepers. And from looking at our bits of paper, we've all picked the same. Jordan picked it.
First name on the team sheet, I think, for me. I think there's some people probably question him at club level, but you can't question him at international level. He's the best goalkeeper in the list I know maybe Henderson and Ramsdale haven't had the same opportunities as him, but Pickford's hardly put a foot wrong for England, and he's also had a very good season for Everton, so I think it's a fairly easy pick.
Yeah, I think as well, when you see him as part of that defensive unit, everything comes from him in terms of we start with him, we're looking to build, and I think he's very dominant in his communication, gives a lot of guidance and instructions, and you can see that when you're live at games or when you're watching it from home. So yeah, it's a sort of a no-brainer to have him start.
And I think the thing with Pickford as well is, as his England career has gone and he's calmed down a little bit, he'll be the first to say that he was a bit mad, and he still is mad, and the occasion would get to him at international level. And I think now, playing with better players and as the England team have developed, he's just calmed down a little bit. Yes, he's still as mad as a box of frogs, which every goalkeeper needs to be, but he's just calmed down. And I think that if Ramsdale was Arsenal's number one, I think he'd get in over Pickford.
Okay.
But I think Pickford is no worries.
Yeah. Easy call, isn't it?
Yeah. And what formation are we going with as well?
I've gone for I can see it being a 4-3-3, but having two deeper midfielders with, I don't want to spoil the pitch, but with one a bit further in front, and then.
Yeah, I've done exactly the same as you, Ivan. I've gone 4-2-3-1.
Oh, well done. Yeah, same as that. Yeah, perfect. So our two centre backs.
So have we all gone
Okay.
Stones and Maguire?
Yeah.
I think there's no real question about John Stones. He's the best centre back we've got. Harry Maguire's definitely a hot topic. Love him or hate him, he's very good for England compared to his form at Manchester United. The only real question is, how match fit is he? He's obviously not had a load of game time for Man United this season. So the only thing I would like to offer is I could see Mark Gahey potentially starting the first game. I know he himself has also come back from injury, but I think after them two, he's potentially the best centre back in that list.
I think Stones is Rolls Royce.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And with that centre back pairing, all the great teams have had the hammer and the nail. You know what I mean? You think about the great Italian sides, they've had that defender who's going to go through and win absolutely every header. And then they've had that calm, I'm going to step through, I can easily play midfield and I want to play. And that's what them two offer. And they've played together at international level. And that pairing, that understanding, I think that adds a huge amount of value and a huge amount of worth.
You want to dominate as a defensive pair, that area. So yeah.
Yeah, cool. Left back?
Anyone else want to start on this? Or
Helen?
Yeah,
Done.
Trippier. I've gone for leader. Captain, Newcastle. I think very experienced, and I think you just want that sort of level-headedness in sort of key areas that you can also utilise him as an attacking left back as well, when you're wanting to move the ball sort of higher up the pitch.
You think about Trippier, I think about corners, I think about free kicks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yes, we've got a load of players on that pitch that can whip them and score them. But as a defender as well, to have that ability to do what he does on the ball from the dead ball situation, he'll get a goal. He will get a goal in this European Championships. Now, I'm not a betting man. If I was, I would probably put a couple of quid on him. Who did you go with, Ivan?
Yeah, I'm also on Trippier. I think the left back spot's potentially the hardest because obviously Trippier is not exactly a natural left back, but I think he's the pick of the bunch at the minute. You said his set pieces are immense, and he also captained us against Bosnia, so he's highly thought of in Southgate's plans. I would still be taking, I know we've already gone through who we're keeping, but I would still be taking Luke Shaw and Joe Gomez to act as cover as left back. I think some people might think that Shaw could start. He's another that's just not had that game time in the second half of the season with injuries, and Joe Gomez, he's more of a centre back. We've seen him being played as a left back for Liverpool, but I just don't think he's quite Trippier's level. All
great replacements as well, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if Shaw's match fit, then I can see him pushing Trippier for that starting spot. But the great thing with Kieran Trippier as well is he's so versatile that he can play left or right.
Yeah, no, exactly that. So my midfield, I've got
right back.
Right back.
Skipping one of England's best players out.
Jesus, yeah, right back. So again, we've all agreed on the same right back, Walker.
Not to be forgotten or anything. He's just
no, not to be forgotten. He goes about his job brilliantly. Again, another leader. When you actually think about who we've got, whether they're captains or club captains or the second choice captain, that back five.
Yeah.
They're all captains?
Yeah, I think, well, Stones isn't at City, but he definitely possesses leadership characteristics. Yeah. I think Kyle Walker's actually one of the most important players in the England team. When you've got players like going up against Kylian Mbappe, say, you do not want anyone else than Kyle Walker marking him. He's versatile enough to play in a back three, back four or back five, and yeah, he is one hell of a player. I think it shows his level by the fact that he's kept out players in recent years like Trent Alexander-Arnold and Reece James from holding down that squad. So yeah, I didn't really want to let you skip over him just because I think I'm quite the admirer of him.
I just want to apologise to him. I know he does listen to the podcast, so I'm sorry, Kyle Walker.
I'd say he's like the equivalent for me of like the Lucy Bronze of the England men's team. I think what he offers defensively, he can then match with his attacking ability and just the personality. I think when you look at that squad as a whole, the personality side of it, I feel like over recent years we've really got to know them as not just players but the people behind the player, and I think that shines through in each of them, whether it's like individually or as a defensive unit. So I think that has also made it quite a tricky job actually narrowing it down to the final selection of who you're taking.
Great you mentioned that, because you think about England squads in the past, you had Man United players, you had Chelsea players, you had Arsenal players, you had City players, they hated each other.
Yeah.
And they couldn't, and they've gone on record and said exactly the same, whereas these boys get together and it's like they're playing club football.
Yeah.
And the banter that they have and the jokes that they have, and you look at it and you're like, that's a team together. Very much like the women's when they went on and won the Euros. It was just that whole, all of them, from the manager down to the physio, they were all together on the journey. And it's great when you see them at training, mucking about and doing what they do, because we can watch all this stuff now. You just look at it and it's like, that is a squad together.
Yeah.
And fingers crossed they're going to bring home the victory. So we now will move on to the midfield. I've gone for 2 in that little holding role. Now I don't expect it to be a 2. I expect it will be a 1, and 1 will be just driving on because he's absolutely unreal. So in my 2 I've gone for Rice and Jude. Rice is a good player, 100%, going to Arsenal, taking him to that next level, and he's flourished there, I think. And it's his forward play more than anything. We all know he can do the horrible stuff getting back, but he wants to contribute going forward now. And Jude, there are no words that you can use to describe that kid.
Yeah.
That haven't already been said. He's just phenomenal, and he may not. The thing that I love about Henderson is he's very much like Wharton as well. Jude Bellingham, is that he does the ugly stuff without even breaking a sweat. And he just plays football with a massive smile on his face, and you're like, go on, lad. Yeah. You know what I mean? What?
And he's still ridiculously young as well. He's like, if you think he's probably got about at least another about 5 major tournaments, and then 4 or 5 major tournaments, and
that's probably got 5 Ballon d'Ors. Yeah. Helen, who did you go with?
I went exactly the same as you for exactly the same reasons. I went Rice and Bellingham in a 2, but with Bellingham having more of that freedom to drive forward, and likewise if they've got an option to switch it up as well. Jude can be that holding if Rice is taking it forward. But I look at that attacking options that we've got, and it was like, how can we get as many of those attacking players on the pitch at any one time? So that was more my thought process around how are we going to set up to then actually have Bellingham on and have a few of the others that we haven't quite got to yet.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Ivan?
I've also got Declan Rice in there. I think he'll play, well, he's going to be the classic 6 and sit. I don't think we've got a player that's better at transitioning the play on. And like I said, he's been absolutely immense since joining Arsenal. I think, how much did he cost him? About 105 million. Like something ridiculous like that. And no one's talking about the fee because he's just been that good. And alongside him, I'd actually have Trent Alexander-Arnold, which is probably the most controversial take. He is a right back for Liverpool, but I guess for England he's playing this more of a as a midfielder, and he could play alongside Rice or maybe just slightly in front of him. But I just think I've always thought that Trent's a bit better going forward than he is at the back, but he can still obviously provide that defensive cover because he's so used to playing as a defender. I just think Rice needs to be the one further back of them two. And then just ahead, or say ahead of them both, is Bellingham. He'll be playing just behind the striker, I think. I also think it's as Southgate's listed him as a forward, I think that's where we can kind of expect him to play. And yeah, I think he should score a few, hopefully.
I think it's an exciting time because you mentioned about playing players who are in form, and I don't think there's any better player who must be going into these tournaments with more confidence than Jude Bellingham. And as you said, long may that continue. We mentioned about building squads around players, and we've always done that. The issue that we're going to have is we've got 22, 23 kids now that we can potentially build squads around.
Yeah, one other midfielder I just want to bring up as well is Conor Gallagher, who's had a really, really good season for Chelsea. I can see him. He won't be a starter, but say if we need to switch up the tactics or if we're trying to preserve a lead, I can easily see him slotting in there instead of maybe Trent, because he's just that kind of like workhorse like player. And yeah, I think our midfield is incredibly strong, and also even though there aren't that many listed on the official squad list, I think it's kind of a testament to just how good the players that we've got are there.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And for me as well, which I'll explain with reference to why I've gone for 3 and then a centre forward, is they can all rotate and change position. So my 3 that I've got just in front of the 2 holding midfielders, Palmer, Foden, and I've gone for Eze, because as I said earlier, Eze is that kind of gifted player that just makes football look so simple, and he's like an artist. He's like a conductor when he gets on the ball, and I just think that the beautiful part about that is Jude comes in, Eze can drop in the hole, Foden can move, and then Eze can go wide, and that's the great movement. And then obviously I've gone with Harry Kane up top because Kane likes to drop deep, Foden then goes in, Eze will go out wide, and that rotation and that movement is why that team will go on and win the European Championships.
That's
Helen,
pretty strong point, isn't it? How do you follow that up?
How do you follow that? So I've gone similar to you with one just sat one just sat in front of those 2, so I've gone Cole Palmer, either side, Saka and Foden. I think each of them offer something different. Foden will look to get the ball at his feet, cut inside. Saka looking to work the channels a little bit more. And I think just Cole Palmer, the form that he's been in, was he second top goal scorer in the Premier League this season? Probably the best move that he could have done was to go to Chelsea and be the go-to guy.
And good at penalties.
Good at penalties, yeah. So, yeah, it was more like, to my point earlier, it was like, how can we get these, all of these players on the pitch at any one time? I think with Eze, I think it was a really difficult decision for me not to include him in that starting, because I think what he brings in terms of the directness of play, and I think forward, look forward, play forward, that's what ultimately we should be doing, especially with these players that we've got. They're all great with the ball at their feet and can score goals. It's like we should be making the most of what they can bring to the squad and bring to a starting 11. And then I've got Kane up top as a number 9. Again, difficult. Ollie Watkins I'm a big fan of, but I think from a perspective of experience, easy captain, starting game, it's like you sort of want to be able to rely on your captain and probably your top goal scorer.
Yeah, so I've gone for a 3 across 2 forwards and 2 wingers and a striker. So fairly similar. I've gone Palmer on the right, Foden on the left, and then Harry Kane through the middle. I think forwards is the one that they've got the most option for change, I guess. I think Kane is he's a nailed starter, isn't he? As good as Ollie Watkins has been, Kane's England's top goal scorer. Always plays well for the country, apart from the odd penalty, but I don't really want to talk about that too much. And then Phil Foden's been best player in the Premier League this season, so I think he's rightfully earned a spot in the attack. Cole Palmer as well has been one of the best, and I've actually chosen for him to be over Saka purely based off of form. I think Saka could well start because he's obviously been in the setup for a fair bit longer than Palmer, but I think Palmer's had the best season and Saka didn't finish the season that well. Then you also you still look at the bench and you still got Eze, who he's probably said can create something out of nothing, but you've also got Jared Bowen and Anthony Gordon, or at least in my list, who I think have both been in really good form in the second half of the season in not underperforming sides, but West Ham haven't had the best season, and Newcastle maybe haven't reached the heights of last year, but it's a very strong forward ranks.
Yeah, I think with like you were just saying, Ivan, about some of those players that haven't been in the most sort of high performing teams in the league, it takes a lot of responsibility on those players to then be able to lead that forward. So yeah, I completely agree with like Bowen and Eze, probably Eze being a bit more of a wild card. But actually, when you see the raw talent that some of these players, it reminds me of like Theo Walcott back in the day, was like fresh, really eager, really quick. Raw talent, and it's like, how much can we keep of that rawness to then be able to go and really sort of win those games and utilise what they bring that we haven't seen or don't see in other players in that squad?
What I think we've got a really, really good mixture of in all of the squad, but especially in our starting 11s, is you've got the players that are experienced. This is tournament 3, this could be tournament 4. And then you've also then got them little gems that this is going to be first tournament, possibly second tournament. They have no fear. They haven't not succeeded with England. Yes, we haven't won anything, but every single tournament we're getting a little bit closer. We're getting a little bit closer, and it's, I think it's really exciting. Not just now, but the next 10 years, and it just really, really excites me to watch the games. My final question, and I haven't prepped you for this at all. You always get one player in the tournament that just shocks everyone with either scoring goals or playing, starting and stuff like that. In this England squad, we talk about a wild card. If there was that one player that you look at and go, that one player could win us the championship, who's it going to be?
For me, I think it's Phil Foden.
I was going to go a bit left field before you said to win it, but I think you could see a real quality defender emerge from maybe one of the second string players. You look at your Gahey's, your Ezri Konsa, Jared Branthwaite, one of them, say if anything was to happen to Stones or Maguire, one of them could come in and absolutely excel. But I think going forward, I think Bellingham and Foden are the two that are going to have insane tournaments. But I'd also keep an eye out on Jared Bowen if he does make the squad and gets a few minutes, because he's proven that he's got an eye for goal and has looked fairly decent recently as more of a dark horse.
Yeah, I think for me, Jude Bellingham, 100%. He didn't even make my starting 11. I just think with the season that Liverpool had and him being injured and then coming back, I think Trent's got a very big part to play in this tournament. Yeah. Because he's had his critics about defending, and I think playing him forward a bit more, I think he's going to have a tournament that might just, some of the passes that he does as well, he's unreal, and I just think sometimes you just need that little bit to unlock. But there we go. So thank you very much, Ivan. Thank you, Helen. Gareth, if you need any help with any tips, any patterns of play, we are available here at Meadowbank. But good luck to England in the Euros, and wherever you watch the games, I hope you enjoy them and you stay safe. From me, from Ivan, from Helen, thank you very much for listening.
Let's bring it home.
Thanks, guys.